All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Anchor of the Week, where we have hard conversations, hear people's stories, and challenge perspectives. I'm Courtney.
And this is Zach.
And we are coming at you with another episode in our series on worldview. I am super pumped for this episode because we finally get to talk about nihilism.
Long overdue.
Yes, I have been
yeah.
talking about nihilism, or wanting to talk about nihilism, for a very long time. And we have a very special guest with us today, all the way from my hometown of Toronto. We have Helen, who is behind the Nihilist Potata account on Instagram. Helen, welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody. It's Helen. Potata.
The Potata
Yes.
herself. Helen, would you like to give us kind of like a brief overview of, who you are and the whole idea of the Nihilist Potata and that whole persona?
Sure. But before I start my introduction, I'd like to ask you guys to guess my age. Guess how old am I?
On the spot.
Okay.
You go first.
I'm gonna say you're like around my age. I don't know. I'm gonna say I'm 27. You're like 27-ish.
24.
Well, actually, I'm in my mid-30s. So the reason I'm saying my age is because I want to let you guys know it took me quite a journey to go through what to get where I am today. So it's not like Helen, just a young girl who didn't have a lot of experience. No, it took me a long time and a long journey to get here. So I came to Canada when I was 19 years old, alone as an international student. And I came here for art school. And then following that, it was really tough 4 years of trying to fit into the school, the culture, and there was issues happen with the language and the culture shock, and the whole relationship stuff about young people that also happened in my life too. And I was also pretty sick during that 4 years. So what came after that was quite while I was pretty depressed. And then after I graduated from the art school, I spent 2 years working in Toronto in a design firm, and then I spent another 2 years in Singapore also working as a designer. And I think it was probably just my personality. I've been always a person seeking for meanings of doing everything. So no matter, that's why I choose to leave my country, go to a different place for education. And I was moving around, changing jobs, still trying to look for the meaning of life, and working, trying to do something meaningful. But it was just weird, during my whole 20s, I was actually quite depressed. Because no matter what I do, I just found it was quite boring in the end. Like, for example, when I was working with a client, I just don't feel like I'm really helping them. It's just the business. You got paid and you do what they ask you to do. But that got better after I went back to Canada for my master's degree in design, because it was very academic. There was a lot of new knowledge came in, and then I got a chance to be the teaching assistant. And by the way, the teaching assistant in art and design is a bit different from other disciplines, because we were like helping students directly in person, where we help them with the schoolwork, telling them what you need to do to improve and everything. So I built up this really close connection with the young students, mostly first year, second year undergrads. And that's where I start to feel like, I'm kind of feeling that meaning of life at that point, when I start to build up this connection with young people and helping them at school. So I thought, maybe that's what I want to do in life. So I furtherly pursuing the PhD degree in education. That's what I'm doing now.
Oh, nice.
But I mean, during this long journey, sometimes quite depressed, I started getting this interest in internet memes, because I think internet memes really helped me to get through a lot of hard times, just by kind of scrolling those memes and, just laugh a bit and you feel slightly better about what, all the bad things that happen in your life, right? So that's also when I start to feel like I want to study this whole visual culture, because it has something to do with my background in design as well. So I just want to study this culture more seriously and see how we can use it in a positive way,
Yeah.
and also bound to my personal relationship with the culture. How do we seek for meanings through this whole visual culture of internet memes and what I'm doing now? So yeah, that's the story behind.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much, first of all, for sharing that. That's awesome. I think right off the bat, even a lot of people are going to relate to that. And I think that it's super cool. Something that was really standing out to me, though, is we're talking a lot about finding meaning, yet your account, your persona is called the Nihilist Potata. And nihilism in and of itself is essentially that nothing means anything, So where is that kind of link then? You know what I mean? How did we get from point A to point B? Like, is it just completely satirical in that sense, or?
I think there was some sort of accident in there, because I think the reason I called the project Nihilist Potata was because I remember there was some point when I was doing my research. There was some research paper where people trying to connect that whole concept of memes, that kind of critiquing everything and laughing at everything into that, nihilist attitude in there. And I mean, saying memes and nihilist is a very big statement. And, for me as an academic person, I will need to do a lot of research to prove that. But I mean, what is good about this social media account is that it's an art project. So it's very speculative. There's nothing evident in there. It's just me making memes and trying to see what's happening. So I would say that nihilist aspect of this potato persona it was supposed to be an art project. But when I thought about the deeper connection in there, I thought maybe that was probably because of me, because I'm the creator of this potato potata. So maybe that was because of me. At some point of my life, I was actually a nihilist. So that's why this potato is deeply rooted in some part of my mind or my heart. So that's why I'm bringing to the table right now. And as what we talked about, I'm always a person seeking for meaning. So of course, the more you seek for meaning, maybe at some point the more nihilist you will feel, because meaning just means so much to you, right? I also know there's a lot of people who just don't care about the meaning of doing anything. So, well, they don't think about it, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is,
It's
when
good.
everything means so much, it's like, yeah, you feel that gap or that lack, right? Searching for that meaning. And
Yeah.
wow.
That's great.
I think some seasons of my life were just defined right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Have you so tell us what kind of things have you found through your project so far on kind of Nihilist Potata?
I think my funding, there wasn't any clear funding, because I mean, if I try to make this connection between nihilism with internet memes, that could be a whole PhD level of dissertation in there. But in my research, it was actually just one chapter. I was trying to speculate what could happen if there's a connection. So in my third chapter of my master's thesis, I actually brought up this question. I have some data in there. Someone else research shows, like, when people talking about the important topic and stuff on social media, at the very beginning, when that topic is on the trending, people very, very emotional. We could be angry or frustrated. We have this urge to express our opinions. But after just a couple of hours, that emotion decays and then it's gone. And then we move on to talk about another topic. And then, just on and on all the time. So that's why in that chapter, I made this couple of videos you probably can find on my Instagram account. I was taking those popular memes. I think that was 2000, 21, the beginning of 2021, I took all the popular memes from the internet and make them into those patterns of like ornaments. And you see like how when you're putting like all those important things on social media all together, it just become it losing that visual hierarchies all mixed up together. So if you look into those detailed image I used in that project, there was I remember the time there was the Australia fire, and also there was a tension between the US and Iran. I remember people talking about there's gonna be the third world war, and then there was COVID just started at the time, so people was so panic on internet at the time. I remember they were making all those memes about those topics. So what I did was just grabbing all those memes together and mix them all together. And then there's no visual hierarchy. You don't know where to look at, right? So that I try to represent that feeling when people browsing social media. It seems like everything matters. But meanwhile, when everything matters, it seems like nothing matters anymore because we have limited energy, we have limited time. But there just seems like so many stuff to care about. So eventually we end up doing nothing but just making memes and laugh, and then we forget.
It's almost like you get lost amongst so much. Yeah,
exactly. So that's why in chapter 3 I was speculating this nihilist attitude on internet, because if we only make memes, express the feeling, the emotions, without continuing putting effort into making any changes or doing anything meaningful in real life, for me that's kind of nihilist, because it's just purely expression. I mean, it probably doesn't even do anything good for yourself, because I heard a lot of people saying they feel really stressed out or anxious after they browsing social media for hours, right? Yeah. So I mean, that's really like a lose-lose situation for everybody. So I think that's where I start to speculate. But I think if I went to the program of communication and culture, probably I will continue this topic, researching about the relationship between internet memes and nihilism. But actually the program I'm in right now is education. So I'm no longer speculating that direction. Right. So what I'm doing right now is kind of it probably sounds ridiculous, but it's also fun. It's a fun project. Now I'm trying to develop some pedagogies for people to teach them how to make meaningful memes at school. So
I love
yeah,
that's so
it's possible. One day you will have a course in the university to teach you how to make good memes.
That's amazing. I mean, this is where society is headed. So yeah. And like, because I've been reading some of your research papers, which were amazing, by the way. And one of the things that really like stood out to me as well is we talk about how I'm gonna say this in very like basic terms, not as nicely as you put it, but the style of memes, right? It's like there's no like standard of art, it is art, but basically kind of anything goes. Do you think in that sense as well of just how we kind of throw things together, does that add to that kind of nihilistic maybe like perspective of?
Yeah, of course. And another thing I would like people to know, this is not something new. This is not the first time we human doing that in history. So I think during my whole master study, I got in touch with a lot of history, back in World War I, World War II, relate to Dadaism. And also I learned stuff about postmodern design. And
pause there. Can you explain what Dadaism for those that do not know?
Yeah, so Dada is the art movement in the history. It happened during around the World War I, and it's a bunch of avant-garde artists, making those really anti-convention type of artwork. For example, the most famous one you probably know is Michel Duchamp, and he was the one who putting the mustache on top of the Mona Lisa's painting. And also he bought this you know, like a toilet stuff and got a name sign on it and try to display it as a piece of artwork. I mean, that's like the earliest kind of meme stuff to me. It's kind of, I mean, maybe people don't like that term, but for me, that attitude was kind of like a trolling, you know, like when you're in this art gallery, you're expecting a bunch of decent artwork, but all of a sudden someone throw a toilet in there, like, oh, that's my artwork. And people like, are you trolling here, right? So, so yeah, so that's why I'm trying to make this connection between some of the movement in art history, you know, telling people, you know, this is not something new we're doing here. You know, in the modern time, there's a lot of artists who, especially, you know, those rebel one, they tried things like you know, just challenging everything that is conventional, and you know, the convention of art, what we consider is beautiful, what we consider is you know, the culture legitimacy, you know, which is like the good taste in art. So yeah, I think memes kind of, I don't mean like all the memers know what is happening in art history, but I do think they share the same kind of attitudes or spirit in there. It just we make memes because we want to mess up with something, you know. There, you know, especially I think what I wrote in my research paper, I was saying maybe meme doesn't represent any facts, you know, like it doesn't contain like very useful information. But what is authentic about memes? The emotions behind memes are always quite authentic. So nobody making a meme just try to fake their self. Actually, you know, it's the opposite. People making memes because they have something they want to say, even it's hard to say. So I think that's why in another paper I talk about memes become this, you know, expression for something taboo to talk about, because it's hard to put it literal, it's hard to put it straightforward, you know, to speak. So that's why people make memes, and it requires some time and energy to read memes to guess, oh, what's that person talking about in here. So in that way, it's the speaker, the person who talks, can be more comfortable to talk about the hard issues. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different function, the purpose for memes as well. Yeah, some of them are trying to be rebel, and some of them are trying just to talk about some hard topic. And of course, there are quite a lot also just for the sake of trolling, of course, as well. So that's why it's a culture that is really worth studying with some serious stuff, because we cannot just make a definition of saying like memes are like this or memes are like that. No, there's just so many of them, and there are so many different community and group of people behind them. So we really need to differentiate that when we're talking about memes.
No, absolutely. And I think that it's really important that we're talking about it, because it is media that we consume honestly daily. And that's why, again, that we're so excited that we're having this conversation, because I think we can so many times just be like, receive this media, consume it, but not realize the effect that it's having on us mentally or
exactly,
or even the way that we're then starting to process through that, you know, like now I don't know how to talk about, maybe it's my depression or my whatever, without making a joke of it, you know, which in some sense is healthy, you know, because it does help like verbalize it. But where do you think the line is where all of a sudden now we can't have a normal conversation without making a meme out of it?
I think that absolutely has something to do with that polarization on social media. You know, where definitely the like rational conversation is getting tougher to, you know, go on social media. And I have to be honest, memes are quite strong as a weapon to be sarcastic, or, you know, just to put that satire to the people you don't like, because they probably don't get the meme either. So I think when people only making memes without any purpose, but just for the sake of debating on social media, maybe it's a bad sign, because it means we cannot have a peaceful conversation anymore. So we have to be, you know, kind of sarcastic all the time. And you know, being sarcastic is not a very effective way of communication. So yeah, so I definitely think memes are good as something to initiate the conversation. but it shouldn't be the main component of the conversation.
Wow.
Because it's just really hard to get the meme right, get the meaning of the meme right. So we still need to talk through, you know, this kind of like a face-to-face setting, open conversation, no trolling, you know, only talk about the facts and evidence, or even honest feelings are fine. But I mean, when we're making it hard, when we're making the communication less effective, I think that's the, you know, where the things start to going a bit wrong. Because, you know, why you are making the conversation harder by making all those memes that you actually need to interpret first and then to talk, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's why, you know, I'm studying that right now, because I definitely think, you know, whenever there's a new culture emerging, people need that literacy to understand and to read, to understand the pros and the cons of that culture. Because now, you know, whenever the new culture emerges, it doesn't mean, well, it's 100% good or it's 100% bad. It's always, you know, it has some bright sides, but also some dark sides. And people need to be educated to know the both sides and how that impacts their life, impacts their behaviors on social media. That is really important. And I think I think education can really help to gain that understanding and knowledge for whoever using social media.
Yeah. Could you talk us through, because I know you mentioned, I don't know if this is too personal or not, but I know you mentioned obviously you went through the journey of being depressed, and then you found that memes were actually helpful at times and making you laugh and things like that. Obviously, for me, to be honest with you guys, I mean, memes are funny and stuff, and like people, my mates will send me them, and then I'll laugh. But I'm never on my social media really searching through memes specifically.
Whereas I am.
Where,
So.
yeah, so two different, but mine's just football. So,
Yeah.
but so the idea of, for me, looking at it from the outside, I just see people looking at memes, and I'm like, well, it kind of makes you numb, right? And I know we've discussed kind of along those lines, but like, do you think that was actually helpful, or do you think it would have been better for you to step away from memes, or do you think memes fed into that depression at all, or I don't know, like, was it actually helpful? Was that kind of talk us through your revelation, I guess?
So I would say definitely during that specific period of time in my life, memes were definitely helpful but not the major thing, but it was helpful at the time to give me that seconds of you know, that relief, and that with that laughter, you know, from the joke. And but I mean, it's always temporary. I think the function the function of it's not just internet memes, but I mean including art is that they are always working only on the, you know, to that, you know, level of mentality. It always working with what you think, but eventually what makes the change to your life is what you do. It's not what you think or what you feel. So I mean, it doesn't mean what you think and what you feel doesn't matter, but it's more like you need to think through the things, and you need to feel better, you need to feel good, and then you could do some positive things in real life that are actually making changes to make your life better, to make the society better. So I think that's how that's the whole function of good art and good memes, is that they help you to get through the tough time. They help you, they pull you out from that depression for seconds. They help you to carry on those hard times in your life, so that you can restore your energy to go back to the real life, you know, go to care your friends and family, go love them, you know, get yourself out of depression. That's where the real change start to make.
Right.
But if you're just laying on the bed, you know, looking at them self-deprecating memes all day long, I mean, that's not good, to be honest. I mean, on one day, if you're all, you know, restored, well, you rest up and you need to get out from your bedroom and start to doing real things to make yourself
Yeah.
real better. So in that way, I think, good art and good memes, they all, I mean, good music as well. When we look at those good artwork, we feel that energy, we feel boosted, spiritually. And then you'll be like, okay, I feel today, I'm very energetic, I'm happy. So, I can treat the people around me nicely. I'm willing to help, I want to do some good stuff to whoever around me. So I mean, you need that energy. That's what the art, no matter it's meme or music or artwork, that's what they offer you. So I think that's a very positive way to look at memes.
That's great. Like as the catalyst, but I love that, like
yeah.
the distinction you make as well of like, but then you can't stay in that, because I feel like that is then you get trapped in almost like this nihilist little whirlpool, but you take it and then you move on and you find that meaning, right? And something that I would love to ask, I know you said that you're kind of in the middle of it, or kind of, I guess you're working on it right now. Memes with meaning.
Yeah.
That is so exciting and so fun. But what does that like look like then? If we can get trapped in memes without meaning, and that's where we find ourselves now. And again, that that whole more nihilistic maybe worldview that we adopt without realizing it. What does creating memes that have meaning actually look like? I know you're still figuring that out, so if that's not a complete thought, that's okay. But yeah.
And no worries, because actually, yeah, I have done a lot of research around that, because I think firstly that was from my personal experience, because I mentioned about like how I gradually start to feel that meaning of life when I'm making this close connection with students I'm helping, being a teacher right now. So I think the same way is that when you start to helping the community, when you start to help the people around you, everything just come more meaningful, at least for me. So I started researching about, those research around making memes for the marginalized community. For example, I mean, the very first community I conducted research myself was, of course, people who had the same mental health issue, where they all make those memes joking about their depression or that kind of things. So that was one of the earliest community I paid attention to. And then I read those research about making memes for example, in Canada, for First Nation community. And there was research talking about how the LGBTQ community find TikTok become this very safety place for them to talk about their life and their issues. And they're also, that's another interesting one. And also memes are used in a lot of political movements in some of the countries. Like, for example, back in my home country, China, where people often use memes to counter that censorship online, which I found really cool. And there's a lot of, scholars doing research around memes and social movements and social and political movements, where people make memes just trying to speak for themselves and challenge the, dictators, or challenge the authorities, and challenge that political propaganda. I mean, those memes are super creative and they are meaningful. Because
oh, sorry, maybe you're gonna answer the
go
question,
ahead.
but
yeah,
but why do you think it's the memes then that are like able to get that point across? You know what I mean? Is it like is it something because like you can't really say it directly, basically?
Yeah.
Is it that indirect kind of?
Yeah, especially, let's say, for example, let's narrow down to one context, especially, for example, in China, where censorship is very, very heavy on all sort of media. And I think Chinese young people are really smart, because they realize, meme is that, kind of gray space, where you make those very vague statements and whatever, it takes time for whoever censoring it, right? So it's like they need to think through, are they being sarcastic to over political propaganda, or are they not? Like, it's really confused the politicians. So I mean, in that way, it's really smart. People finally got a chance to talk about politics with memes, especially in China. And you know, whatever protest you saw that happened in China, you always see memes in there, because that's just how people find to speak about something they usually cannot speak, you know, directly on social media. So I mean, in that case, meme is really doing a big favor for people to express their political statements. So I mean, that's one good example of, you know, using meme in a meaningful way.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It is crazy. Wow.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. Wow. It's
No,
like,
yeah.
we've had this thing that's almost, you know, to a level been toxic, but it's like we've just reversed the whole
Reversed it.
system. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
So I mean, eventually it's really about the whole intentions of making memes, like why you are making memes, for what, and what are you trying to talk about, and who are you communicating to, and why you're communicating to. I mean, that's a lot of rationale, you know, in making memes and sharing memes. And when you can articulate that rationale, and meme all of a sudden become this very powerful expression for you. So, you know, in a lot of cases where we saw people making those kind of like a meaningless memes or bad memes, in most of the case, it's because they don't know, or they cannot articulate what the meme is about, or why are people making those kind of memes, right? So
Right.
for me, it's all about literacy, to be honest. You know, we used to teach people writing and reading so you can understand the meaning behind the language, right? But now we got memes. It's another different form of communication. Of course, we also need that literacy to read and to make memes so we can understand how memes could be used by different people for different purpose. So you can protect yourself not being manipulated by anyone making memes. But meanwhile, you can also use memes for yourself, for your own needs, you know, for whatever, you know, expression. So I mean, meme is just simply itself is a powerful expression.
Wow.
Yeah.
You need to become meme literate.
Yeah,
Love
to
that.
be honest, yeah, totally. And it just because it's such a new visual culture, I think that's why, you know, academia is usually slightly behind what is on the trend, right? So that's why we're finally starting, a lot of scholars starting the research around memes, because we start to find they are very, very powerful. They are strong. They are not just being used among young people in young generation. I mean, if you you probably notice that a lot of politicians, they also start to use memes. And because they feel like, you know, because I'm making memes here, so people love memes. So, you know, finally I can I can do some political propaganda with memes, but people still will buy it because it's meme. Well, I mean, you know, for centuries, you know, politicians, whoever in power, is always trying to use different discourse to manipulate people or to convince them with their political view. But I think what is important is people need to have that literacy to understand the discourse, and no matter it's language or it's visual or it's meme. So that's why what I'm doing right now, because I found it's meaningful. And I wanted memes to be meaningful for people.
That's amazing. That literally, I think our last question was going to be like something along the lines of what you just said, you know, like how do we make sure that we're not just allowing memes to, I guess, desensitize us, or to like, how do you differentiate between whether or not you're adopting a worldview or like I don't know, like what's I'm trying to say here?
I'm not sure.
No. Whether or not you're adopting a worldview maybe subconsciously versus like something to, I think that's where I was going with.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
you that, like being meme literate, like don't be illiterate. Don't let, you know, things subconsciously manipulate you, or don't get stuck in kind of that one aspect. What is the intention behind it? Why are you reading it? Why are you making it? Why are you sharing it? And yeah, like realizing the power that it like has over you, that it could have over you, but then the power, if you flip it, that you can give it, right, to actually change something.
Exactly. So that's why, one thing because I didn't have the background in education, but now I'm very fascinated by the whole, like all those theories in education, is because I realized knowledge really empower people. So when you know things, and when you know things, how things work, and finally you can think independently and critically as well. So I think that's a foundation of education. And I think that's what makes me finally feel like, oh, what I'm doing is meaningful, compared with doing business with client, it's all just money stuff. But now what I'm doing is feel like I'm really helping people, and I'm helping young people who probably going through the hard time like how I used to. So that is really, really meaningful for me. And that's probably kind of pull me out from that whole nihilist mindset when I was younger. Because I think I did have that whole transform from being a little bit nihilist when I was younger, and until now finally feel like what I'm doing is meaningful.
Wow,
that's
good. Amazing. I think you just wrapped it up in the best way possible. I'm so happy that you saw me. I think that's great. I don't think I could really ever personally be a full nihilist
no.
because of that. Like everything means too much and so much, and there is so much meaning in the world. And so thank you so much, Helen, for sharing your journey with us, your personal journey, your academic journey. And honestly, I think, like, I can't believe we haven't talked about this before. Like, why are we not talking about it? As you said, memes and internet culture is the new way that we're communicating, just as not just a generation, but like societally and culturally as well. So I think this is a very important conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Also thank you so much for having this podcast. I think definitely the whole objective of this podcast is so meaningful, having people from different worldview to talk and ask hard questions. I mean, that's also what we do in school as well. So I really appreciate any medias like you guys. That's wonderful to talk with you all.
Thank you so much. Yes, and thank you guys for listening as well. Hopefully this conversation has challenged you. Maybe it'll change the way that you look at memes, share memes, or just be a bit more critical. Think more critically in the way that you're looking at that.
I have someone in mind I'm going to send this to.
I know exactly what it is. Anyway, yes, thank you so much, Helen. Thank you guys for listening. As always, you guys can find us in the usual spots on Spotify, YouTube, all podcast platforms, and on TikTok and Instagram under @the_Anchor of the Week. Helen, where can they find the Nihilist Potata?
Just get on Instagram, search for Nihilist Potata with a potato, but the last character is A.
There you go. There you go. You should give her a follow. She's great. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.
All right, thank you.